national Adoozy INpowered initiative has started with personal protection campaigns to deal with gender-based violence. This campaign will this time target university students in Pretoria with safety knowledge and the physical skills to fend off any predators. Pretoria is ranked one of the most dangerous countries or cities, I beg your pardon, the most dangerous cities for women and girls, not only in the country, but also in the continent. Joining us now is Mathabo Sekhonyana, who is the spokesperson for Adoozy Power, who joins us via our video link. Mathabo, it's great to see you. Thanks so much indeed for making time. Tell us a bit more about this initiative and why you've decided to target specifically students this time around.
Good afternoon, Ayanda. Thank you so much for having me. So the Adoozy INpowered campaign started in a partnership between Adoozy Power and Women Empowered. And we kicked this off in 16 days of activism, starting initially with high school students in townships such as Newzroom and rolling out to universities across the country. Now, the reason why we have specifically looked at universities and schools in this demographic is these are the women that we see being the most vulnerable to issues around abuse, gender-based violence, and the like.
Yeah, and what makes them susceptible to this kind of violence, do you reckon? Is it because of the environment they're in those universities? Is it because universities themselves don't take this seriously enough?
I think it is a myriad of issues. The first thing is obviously just societal. I think that we know that gender-based violence across the board from a societal perspective is pervasive. Now, when you also have an environment within university campuses and school campuses where you have high concentration of people interacting on a daily basis, you do become a lot more vulnerable, particularly because they are perceived safe spaces where you think, I know this person on some level, it's my classmate or it's a friend of a friend. And very often perpetrators use this perceived safety as an opportunity to perpetuate more violence.
And, of course, what also further complicates the situation is that many people in that space are also coming of age. There is a fair amount of experimenting that happens in the university space, and it's easy sometimes to blur the lines when that happens.
Definitely. I think a big part of that is also kind of a loose understanding of what is consent, what is coercion. Where do you feel that your no is taken seriously? To what extent do you actually understand what has happened to you? In a lot of our research and conversations that we've had with university students, a lot of them only realized even after the fact that situations that they may in the moment have told themselves were consensual were actually a perpetration of, for example, rape.
Sorry, my apologies. I seem to have lost my connection to you, Mathabo. I'm not sure if that's just me, but hopefully you can still hear me as I ask my next question. Typically, what I also find is that these discussions happen in echo chambers. You know, even at university spaces, it typically will be the woman, sometimes the women who've been victims of gender-based violence, that attend these kind of talks and want to contribute. What do you reckon it is we need to do to break those echo chambers? Because the only way that such initiatives will become impactful is if they land on people to whom they should.
I think it is one thing to see the statistics. It has been quite another to do these workshops. For example, we did this latest one at the University of Pretoria this week on the 1st of August. And what was scary looking at our research was our broader research shows us that 65% of women that we interviewed had experienced gender-based violence. When we did the survey in the room at the University of Pretoria, over 80% of the women in that room said that they had either experienced GBV firsthand or that they knew someone who'd experienced GBV, with a further 90% of that saying that that case had not been reported. So it's definitely women who are already facing some kind of brokenness who are seeking out these programs. For us, what we're hoping as a second step is to have women who are able to get this protection or get the experience of the self-protection course before something has already happened to them.
Yeah, and that's incredibly important. And for people to be able to do that, we need to see the signs. Are we getting any better at reading those signs of abuse, do you reckon, Mathabo?
I think it's actually the opposite. So the first thing is just standing on research, and our research with women is saying to us that 55% of them are saying they have felt unsafe in some capacity in the last week. But scarily, 55% say that they simply don't know how to defend themselves. What that means for women is you're in a situation where not only do you feel vulnerable, you also don't know what to do. Add to that kind of that societal thing where you don't want to be offensive or impolite unless you're 100% sure that something is wrong. And an important thing that I think we teach in the training is you would rather be seen as impolite or offensive and be more safe than the opposite. And this is very different to kind of how women move through society and through their social spaces.
Yeah, it sounds to me that if this is going to hit all the right notes, it's simply a discussion that can't happen without us unpacking socialization, generally speaking, how typically men are socialized and how women ought to respond to that. How much of an emphasis do you reckon we should place on at least that aspect of the conversation?
I think it is incredibly important because that is the root, I think, of the thing, is understanding the whys, having the important conversations around consent, is having the conversations with both men and women around what does a healthy yes look like. From a gender-based violence perspective, is understanding what things are simply not acceptable. Until we kind of root that out in society, we are always going to be dealing or reacting to a problem as opposed to solving. However, just looking at this campaign specifically, it's very difficult, or it takes certainly a longer period of time to do that kind of impactful psychological change. And our belief is that at the very least, the starting point or step one is to help people, or help women specifically, to mitigate those situations and feel a little bit more safe.
Mathabo Sekhonyana, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. There's certainly a conversation we should have throughout the entire year and not just during specific periods when the country perhaps is more focused on gender-based violence. So appreciate it. Mathabo Sekhonyana is the spokesperson of Adoozy Power. Thanks very much again.